You know, when you're trying to untangle a big knot, how with every tug comes both a releasing and a tightening? It's a slow process of creating tension in just the right ways in order to provide release, eventually turning disorder into something purposeful, useful, and ready to be put to work. In 2018, we began a process of putting our vision into practice, a process we called Renew. For over a year, and with the expert help of a consulting firm, we tugged and pulled at the very fabric of who we are as a church to isolate where we were strong and where we could be stronger. You may remember that this process involved every single member of the church, from focus groups to town hall meetings, surveys to leadership retreats. No stone was left unturned. We used all metrics at our disposal: financial analysis, peer group comparisons across a national database, and even personality tests to assess who we are, what we do well, and what we could do better, so that we might faithfully continue in the mission God has for our church. For starters, we sought to name what about Signal Pres has always been true and always will be true. We landed on 5 things, which we call our enduring values: biblical authority, sacrificial love, transformational discipleship, generational investment, and missional living. These values serve as the bedrock for our vision to equip all people to live ordinary life as the faithful presence of Jesus' love. With these foundational pieces in place, it was time to take a good look in the mirror. If they are the values that truly matter most, how does the ministry and life of Signal Pres reflect these priorities? After months of research, TAG presented an analysis of our church health. As you may expect, we had glowing reviews in many areas. Compared to a national database of thousands of churches, our church scored strongly in areas such as providing a caring community for families and delivering solid biblical preaching and teaching. As you also may expect, there were areas where we could do better. Signal Pres was lacking alignment across ministry objectives. There was tension around worship styles and gaps in interpersonal connectedness and engagement. In the months that followed, the session began to talk about how we would turn what we learned during Renew into action. As much as we wanted to charge ahead, the primary and initial goal was to grow trust, build unity, and to foster grace and healing. It was clear that the church had already been through much transition, but we weren't all ready for more. You know what happened next? A pandemic. The last year has been as challenging as it has been providential. We have learned so much about the people who are our church, how we all need to be cared for, and how we need to be challenged. We've learned that old, tried, and true models of ministry don't always work as well as we thought. We've learned about family worship habits and needs for discipleship across all ages. We've learned about the benefits that smaller groups give when it comes to discipling kids and adults alike. We've learned a lot about technology and its role in ministry amidst a disconnected community. Thankfully, much of the challenge of this COVID season is fading away. But by God's grace, what we learned through the silver linings of this same season are shaping the future of our life together. Over the last several months, the staff and leadership have been working on a plan to take what we've learned to shape our future as a church. And we are so very, very excited to invite you into this new season of life and ministry together.
Amen. Wow, we play a video. Y'all get quiet. This is awesome. This is great. So I've been thinking about the world has changed. I've been thinking about that concept, and it was like, oh, well, not just in the way of like in the last year with COVID, but I was thinking back to the way Sunday was this protected time. Like if you think back, I don't know, we'll call it 50 years, maybe a lot less. Sunday was this day where everything was closed. Sunday was for church, and that was it. And now it's kind of weird if a business is closed on Sunday. Now it's like a deal. Like it's something that we talk about. Like, do you know that Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday? The one day that I always want that milkshake. So, but that's a change that's happened in our culture. It's gone from one of a protection of Sunday to one where there's soccer practices and dance recitals and all the things. It's just become another Saturday in a lot of ways. So I've been thinking about that as we kind of tee up what we're about to talk about tonight. And I had a couple of Bible verses that I wanted to share with you. This first one is from Ephesians 6. And it just says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. So the devil has schemes against us. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, which means it's not against you and me, but instead it's against the rulers, against the authorities, and against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms, right? That's the thing. That's the struggle. And as I was thinking about this, I realized a key thing that can happen is Satan uses division as a tool to kind of break us apart into little pieces, and we're just not strong that way. In fact, in Mark, it says, if a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house is divided against itself, the house will not be able to stand. And so part of tonight is we hear, I can't wait for you to hear what you're about to hear. It's amazing. And as we hear that, you may be coming into this with every kind of feeling. You may be feeling tension. You may be feeling excitement. I don't know. I don't know what you're feeling, but you're probably feeling something, maybe just excitement to be around people, which is amazing. But I also want you to feel this, it's kind of like spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, this is an exciting news that you're about to hear. This is an exciting time that we're entering in as a church. And what the devil would love to do is to use this and divide. And what we have to do is come together. In fact, in Philippians, Paul told the church of Philippi to be one in spirit and of one mind. And so that's what we're here to do tonight. We're here to hear. We're here to respond. We want to hear your ideas. May the best ideas win, right? Because it's all for his kingdom and his glory. And so that's what we're here to do tonight. It is so good to see everyone's faces. I'm going to bring Scott Bowen up, and we're going to get this started. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andre. It is fantastic, just fantastic to see y'all here tonight, and I really thank you for coming out. Let me tell you first, sort of in snapshot, what you're going to hear tonight. And this really is the sum of it all, that Signal Mountain Presbyterian Church is focusing ourselves in with laser-like precision now on the church's vision. And we're going to do that by providing for you and your neighbor a place to worship, a place to belong, and a path to grow. So let me give you 2 points that sort of serve as a foundation for everything else you're going to hear tonight over the next couple of minutes. I'll give you those 2 points. These points come together, I think, to answer the question, why? Which is a very good question. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing any of this? What's it all about? 1, it's about focusing in on our church's vision and values. So in the video, you saw the values, and there they are again. They're all over the church. And you also heard the vision. And the vision will be up here in just 1 second. But I'll recap that for you. Our church's vision is to equip all people to live ordinary life as the faithful presence of Jesus' love. In other words, we think that the work that God has for Signal Mountain Presbyterian Church to do is to see all people, that's you and your neighbor, right? That is your grandkids and your neighbor's grandkids, come to be little representatives of Jesus right in the place where God has put you. And I think if you think about it, every story that so many of you in this room tell about why you love this church and how this church has blessed you over the years is ultimately simply the story of those values and that vision playing out. Even if the story you tell comes from a time before the vision and the values were stated in that way. So maybe it is that you tell a story about how 25 years ago you were new and you came into this church, and somebody in this church met you and got to know you and took care of you what you're telling there is a story about how somebody in this church was for you the faithful presence of Jesus' love. Or maybe the story that you tell is, my kids grew up in this church. This church cared so well for my kids, and that's a huge part of why my kids are now out wherever they are with a family of their own, in careers of their own, and they're following the Lord. The story you're telling there is the story of your kids being equipped to live ordinary life as the faithful presence of Jesus' love. And everything you're going to hear tonight is about us staying focused on that vision so that we can continue together to enjoy the fruits of that vision. Stories like that, but not just in your life, even in your neighbor's life as well. So some of you wear glasses, right? And so if you wear eyeglasses, you know that the prescription for eyeglasses that you got when you were, say, 25 years old, now that you are, say, 45, is needed to be adjusted, right? The eyeglass prescription that helped you see everything clearly for so many years now has you seeing things just a little bit fuzzy. So you went to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor looked at you and said, don't worry, nothing's terribly wrong. You're not going blind or anything. This is just normal, right? That over time, our eyes change, and so we just need to adjust the prescription a little bit so you can keep seeing things clearly. Well, as every church does, this church has for a number of years had certain ministry structures and programs that have helped us as a body to keep in focus the work that God has given us to do. And you could think about those programs and structures like our eyeglasses prescription. Now, nothing is terribly wrong. In fact, there is so much that is wonderfully right. But over the course of years, as is normal, things change, right? The community changes, the church changes, our neighbors change, and we change. And now it's time that we adjust the prescription to make sure that the vision God has given us stays completely in focus. That's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about how we as a church can stay focused on our vision so that we can continue to enjoy the fruits of the vision, not just for you, but for our neighbors as well. And after 3 years of discussion and a process that was outlined again for us in that video, we think that what we're going to lay out for you tonight is a good prescription that will help us do that. Stay focused on our vision to keep seeing the fruit of that vision. That said, we also know that there are going to be bumps along the way. We also know that some of the things that we think, and we're going to talk to you tonight about, that we think they're going to help us stay focused on our vision, they might actually not work as well as we think they're going to work. And if that happens, we're going to adjust. That's the beauty of being driven as a church, not by our programs, but by the vision, right? That's what we're about. And we can then, from here on out, measure everything we're doing by that vision, asking the simple question, is this that we're doing, is it helping us stay focused on that vision to see the fruits of the vision for us and our neighbors? And if the answer is no, it's really not, then we will certainly adjust it. And you will help us certainly in that. So there's the first part of the why question. Why are we doing this? It's about staying focused on the church's vision. And now this flows from it. The second part of the answer, I want you to hear this phrase, for you and your neighbor. We really do think that the part of our church's vision that we need to most intentionally refocus on in the season ahead is that phrase in the vision, all people. All people. And so, now, more intentionally and unambiguously than we've done it in the almost 7 years that I've been here, we are saying that according to God's design for His church with a capital C, Signal Mountain Presbyterian Church will exist to welcome, gather, and grow you and your neighbor. That we will, as a church, exist for the people in this room and for the people who would never dream of being in this room. For the people who know the Lord, and for the people who are known by the Lord, but they don't even know it yet. Now, to talk about that, being for you and your neighbor, is in no way to suggest that somehow those two things are in competition. In fact, what we know, because our New Testament teaches us this, is that the best and truly the only way that we can care for one another as Christians is to help each other in service of Jesus give our lives away for our neighbors. Right? Jesus tells us that if you want to keep it, you got to lose it. And the only way that we can truly be for our neighbors is to equip one another to live ordinary life as the faithful presence of Jesus' love, to be the salt and light that is in the midst of a dark and decaying world. And so to say that Signal Mountain Presbyterian Church exists for you and for your neighbor is not to say it's going to be 50-50, or even it's going to be 70-30 or 30-70. No, really it is to say that if we as a church are not 100% for both, then we're not actually really either one at all. You might hear some things tonight, and you might feel upon hearing them, you know what, I don't really know that I like that. I don't really know that that works for me and for my family, for me. And that is fine. And we want you to say that, right? We want you to share that with your table host, and I promise you, we're not going to leave you behind. But even as you hear yourself saying that, I want you to hear those words, for you and your neighbor. And I want to invite you to go with us on a little bit of an adventure, because that's what we're about to do. I need it, but I need you alongside. We are about to learn together as a church how true it is that we are never as satisfied, and we are never as safe, and we are never as rich as when, for the sake of Jesus, we are letting our preferences bend so that our neighbor can hear the voice of Jesus. So those two introductory points really answer the why question. Why are we doing any of what you're about to hear? Because Signal Mountain Presbyterian Church is refocusing on the vision that God has given us. And the very heart of that, the beautiful heart of that, is that we are going to exist for you and your neighbor. Now, having said that, I want to show you this picture that you're going to be seeing a lot of, and you'll even have one to take home with you tonight. This picture, we think, illustrates pretty well how the Bible says you and your neighbor are equipped to live ordinary life as the faithful presence of Jesus' love. And so the Bible teaches us that worship is fundamental in that. It's like the roots, the most important part. And community is part of that. Being in relationship with other believers who will encourage us and pray for us and sharpen us. And for that, we need to learn. We need to learn what the Bible says. We need to learn who God's calling us to be and how He's calling us to live. And when those things are in place, the Bible teaches, that's when God's Spirit normally works to bring about the fruit, right? The fruit of the vision, even as is seen in that tree. And so, here is our prescription, right? Here's how we're going to stay focused on that vision in the season ahead. We are going to provide for you and your neighbor a place to worship, a a place to belong, and a path to grow. Let's start with a place to worship. Little Signal Mountain Presbyterian Church trivia for you. This is, some of you will get this no problem. When this church was founded nearly 100 years ago, the first building the church built was Mar Chapel, right? Which I guess then was just called the Sanctuary. And then 1980, I think I'm right on that, the church is growing, the community is growing, and this church did not decide to build a gymnasium. But this church built a sanctuary that we call the Sanctuary. And then 15, 16 months ago, March of 2020, it's a Saturday morning, and your elders gather for a special called meeting, and it becomes quickly apparent that we need to suspend all in-person activities indefinitely. And what do your elders immediately scramble to do but answer the question, how can our people in some way gather tomorrow morning for worship? And then we poured all these resources into making sure that we could take worship to you when you couldn't come to worship. And then, in a way that I promise you I will never forget for as long as I live, so many of you, from June of 2020 until June of 2021, endured so much inconvenience, wearing masks, checking in, being walked to your seat, and you even put perhaps your own physical health at risk because you wanted to be in worship. And that, all of that tells a story of how at Signal Mountain Presbyterian Church, worship has always been central. Now, it also tells a story about how, in order to keep worship central, the church has had to adjust over the course of time. But the reason that worship has been central at our church is because worship is central in the Bible. Right? So some of you know that in a place like 1 Peter 2 or 2 Timothy 3 and 4, God promises us that when the word is preached, he speaks to us in a way that is not promised to me like every time I open my Bible personally and by myself. Or you read the Gospels, and at the end of the Gospels, as well as in 1 Corinthians 11, you read about Jesus instituting the Lord's Supper. And you read this promise there that every time we gather around the Lord's table, like we're going to do this Sunday in worship, Jesus himself will be present with us, feeding us in a particular way that is not promised every time I go to my Sunday school class. Or you read in Ephesians, Paul saying that as we address one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, Jesus himself will fill us up in a way that is not promised to me every time I go to my community group or small group. All that to say, the Bible teaches us that since worship is the place where God himself promises to show up, speak to us, feed us, and fill us, corporate worship is absolutely central. Now, I want to say something just super quick to those of you in the room who are perhaps parents of younger kids. And what I want to point out to you and to me as well is that there is no start date on those promises. Right? In other words, God doesn't say, of course, that is once you're done with the 4th grade, that starts. Which is to say that those promises of God are true for the 80-year-old just like they're true for the squirmy 8-year-old who you're absolutely sure is not hearing a thing or getting a thing out of worship and is pretty bent on making sure his parents don't either. Now, if you're a young parent, please don't break out in cold sweats. Liz is going to come up here in a minute, and she's going to tell you all about a revamped and strengthened Kingdom Kids to come alongside of you, okay? So don't worry. But I do just want you and all of us to hear that worship is central. It's central for every single one of us, no matter how young or old we are. And it's so central in this church that we are willing to say, if, and that's a big if, you only have 1 hour in the week in order to give to your or your family's discipleship, that because of what God promises He will do in worship, you're going to most wisely spend that hour in corporate worship. And here's the thing. When you know that God promises to show up there, speak to you there, feed you there, we're going to do whatever we have to do to make sure that both you and your neighbor have a place there in corporate worship. That said, I want to look at two stats and then two statements that some of you have made. First, between 2015 and 2020, the average worship attendance has been hovering around 41% of our total membership. And then between the beginning of the pandemic up till now, that has dropped to about 20% of our total membership. And then two quotes, they both come from you. These both come from 2018 when we were going through that whole process of surveys and feedback. And here are two things that were said. Our worship has increasing irreverence. There's a certain formality in the Presbyterian Church that goes with coming before the majestic King that is not understood by people from other religious backgrounds. And then, our church's most significant challenge is formality and a cold, mechanical worship service. The perception of Signal Pres is that it's a church for church people. That's a hurdle for me and even more for my neighbors who have been hurt by the church in the past. See, friends, for some of us, corporate worship at Signal Pres has been working just great. But when we know that 6 out of 10 of people in our own congregation aren't there at the most important thing, and when we know that over the course of the last 15 months, 8 out of 10 of our own people have established entirely new patterns for their Sunday morning that have nothing to do with being present for in-person worship. And when we know that some of our most established members feel, as is seen in that first quote, like the church is moving away from them, while other of our newer members who we need to become established feel like there's no place for them and certainly not for their neighbors, what that tells us is that we can do better. We can do better at providing a place for you and your neighbor to worship. And that leads to the plan that Stokes is now going to share with you.
So how about that jalapeno cornbread? Yeah. So like Scott said, I'm Stokes Smith. I'm one of your 27 elders. It's just a blessing to be able to serve. And it's good to see so many of you out here. Thank you for participating all the way around the corner there. Yeah. So Scott talked about the why. I want to talk to you a little bit about the what, okay? What to expect in corporate worship. Corporate worship, right? So what we do on Sunday mornings in our sanctuary. So if you haven't heard, we're going to have 2 services, okay? 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And these are the 2 most accessible times. Okay, let me give you a statistic, okay? At the 9 o'clock service, with a pandemic, we had more people at that service than we did at the 8:10 service without a pandemic, okay? So let me share a little bit more about the 9 o'clock service, okay? 9 o'clock service is going to be our traditional service. What's it going to look like? It's going to be more formal in its style. We will sing mostly traditional hymns. There's going to be a choir. I'm going to go side tangent here. I've always wanted the opportunity to speak to a large group of the members. You may know in your heart that you know how to sing. Some of you aren't laughing, but you're thinking through this. This is a great time to consider joining the choir. Refresh. Yeah. So let's go back to the 9 o'clock service. There'll be a choir. Instrumentation. We'll have our pipe organ, our piano. We'll have some orchestral instruments occasionally. The pastor will wear robes. Pastors will wear robes. They'll have the vestments that are colored depending on our season that we're in. Sermons will be from the pulpit. And then while the traditional service tends to be a little more formal in its dress, call it your Sunday best, informal dress attire is perfectly welcomed. Okay? So, that's the 9 o'clock traditional service. Now, let me tell you about the 11 o'clock service. This service is going to basically maintain the basic parts of our current service. So we're going to sing a wide range of hymns and songs. Some of them are going to be new, some of them are going to be old. Instrumentation will be a combination of electric guitars, pianos, strings, drums, cymbals. And the congregation is going to be led by a small group of singers. You know what that is. Sometimes, occasionally, there will be a larger group of singers to support the singing. The worship leaders in that service, so our pastors and our musicians, they're going to be dressed much like everybody else, so casual. They're not going to be any robes. Okay? So, that is the 11 o'clock informal service. And we want you to know that, through the process, we weren't sure whether to have the traditional service at 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock. So we want you to know that we're going to be watching the 9 o'clock service closely to see if that's the best time for the traditional service. I think everybody would agree the goal is just whether you know Jesus or you don't. That first timer, we're hoping to throw these two services at that first timer to wiggle our way in, to let Jesus to wiggle the way in to that person's life. And if we do know Jesus, the goal is that these services will allow you to get a little closer to Him every time you come in to hear one. Every week, we get a little closer through Jesus through our corporate worship. Thanks for coming and participating. It's great to see so many of you out here. Scott?
Thanks, folks. So I know that as soon as you hear that schedule, whatever your feelings are about it, which I hope are excitement and joy, one of the things that some of you begin to think is, well, it seems like that schedule is going to affect everything else on Sunday morning, which might then raise a question in some of your minds. Why are those two worship times so important as to affect everything else on Sunday morning? Which is a very fair question. And if you're asking that, I just want to make sure that you ask this question first. Why are we going to the Sunday morning schedule? And the answer is that you and your neighbor would have a place to worship. And yes, since we know all that God promises regarding corporate worship and how central it is, we will and we have moved some things around in order to prioritize it for you and your neighbor. But I also want you to know that we never, ever, ever would have done that in this way if we weren't sure that we could maintain or even improve upon the other elements of the Sunday morning experience, which is why we're going to move now to a place to belong and a place and a path to grow. We're going to start actually with the path to grow, and for that I'll turn it over to Joey and to Jeff Hollingsworth.
Good evening. I'm Joey Sherrod. I'm Associate Pastor of Discipleship here. And I know that you know as well as I do that at the very center of every single church, not just this church, but every church, is teaching men and women the Bible. That's true of us. That's why biblical authority and transformational discipleship are values here. And that's not just who we are right now. That's who we have always been, and that's who we always want to be. And so, as we've talked about new worship times, I know that for many of us who are here, the first question that has been on your mind is, what about my adult Sunday school class? This community that I have had that's helped me grow in knowledge of the Word. And I want you to know that as the worship committee was thinking about lowering as many barriers as possible so that as many people could gather in these times where the Lord has promised to meet us in worship, that as they were having that conversation, that they were thinking about Sunday school. And so Jeff Hollingsworth was on the worship committee, is on the worship committee, was a part of that conversation. As many of you know, Jeff has taught Sunday school here at Signal Pres with the Journey class for many years. And so he was a part of that conversation. There's nobody better to share about that path forward for adult Sunday school than him.
Thank you, Joey. To state the obvious, some things are going to have to necessarily change for the adult Sunday school classes. In the Journey class, what we have gained and what has been given to us in the sense of community, the sense of family even, must and will be preserved. I'm telling you, it will be preserved. In our class, we've been studying about faith and perseverance in the midst of trials. And maybe we can see this change as a trial for our Sunday school class. Well, if it is, Paul has told us, James has told us, Peter has told us that these trials will refine and strengthen our faith. But maybe it's better to see these changes as an opportunity just to let go a little bit, loosen our grip, let God take us. And as Scott said, let's go on this adventure. Let's see what he has in mind for us. Let's see where he takes us, because he will lead us. And what we need to do is follow. And so I think with that in mind, we'll find a way to maintain the community, to maintain the family that we have in our Sunday school classes, but also to have time to teach and discuss and learn from each other about the grace and the mercy of God through his word. There are some, these adult classes that you see up on the board. All of those have agreed that they are going to continue to meet. The details of that are up in the air for a lot of us, and how we're going to do it and when we're going to do it and exactly how that will look is still open for discussion, but we are going to meet. So please don't think that adult Sunday school has gone away. It has not. It has necessarily changed, but it's here, and it's up to us to take it, what God has given us in this time, and take it and use it in a way that will bring glory to him. So, thank you.
So, what we want you to hear, just loud and clear from us, is that if adult Sunday school has been a place for you where you have had a meaningful encounter with God's word, that's something that we are working with you to continue to preserve. You know, Sunday school, it actually began a little bit over 200 years ago, and the initial sort of group that came to Sunday school was working class men and women. Churches started Sunday school classes so that they could teach men and women God's word, but actually a lot more happened there. They actually realized that they had to teach these men and women how to read first before they could read God's word. And I just love that vision and that passion that is seen in something like that. This desire to do whatever it takes so that men and women could have an encounter with God's word, even if it meant teaching them how to read first. And because a little bit over 200 years ago, some men and women tried something new, some of you have had a meaningful encounter with God's word in a community that right now is one of the most precious communities in your life. We celebrate that, and that's for the same reason that we want to try new things, so that in 200 years from now, somebody on Signal Mountain can say, because somebody started something new, there's a community for me that has made all the difference in my life. For that reason, we're really excited to share about a new thing that we're doing that we'll just call for now learning environments. So I want you just to imagine with me for a minute somebody who walks through the front doors of our sanctuary. This is a person who they grew up not going to the Baptist church down the street from them. And they maybe made an appearance at Christmas and Easter with their families, but this was not a part of their life growing up. In college, they were sort of vaguely a part of a campus ministry, enough that they thought there was something going on here, but life just got in the way, and they moved on. But now, they've moved to Signal Mountain. And one of you maybe invited them to church, and so they've started to come. Or one of your kids invited them to kids ministry or to student ministry, and as they've gotten involved, they thought, that's the kind of thing that I want to get involved with too. And as they've been here among us, this person has developed this kind of growing hunger to know what this Christian life is about. Because when we say, would you turn to the book of James, they don't know if that's in the New Testament or the Old Testament. They don't have anything that they're bringing into this place. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves about when this person comes into our church is, where are we going to send this person? What's the class and the space for them? And so we want to create a space for this person, for our neighbor. We want to create a space where someone can walk into our church, and if they don't have a lot of background in the Bible, they don't have a lot of background in the Christian life, that they could come to a place where we don't assume anything, but we want to give them all the tools that they need for the Christian life. This is a place for our neighbor. But it's more than just a place for our neighbor. It's actually a place for us as well. Because there are among us folks who have this sense of imposter syndrome whenever Christians around them are talking. They hear these people talking about this thing called a quiet time. They don't really know what that is, but they know that there's a Bible that they're intimidated to open next to them on their nightstand. And they have been saying the Apostles' Creed in worship for 7 years, and then whenever they get to that line that says, he descended to the dead, they say, I have no idea what that means, but I'm just going to keep saying it, as long as nobody notices that I don't know what I'm saying. We want a place for folks like that among us, folks who just want to grow. They feel like they may be topped out in the Christian life, and they need a space where they can feel like they have all the fundamentals. Or maybe it's a space for people who know that the deepest truths in the Christian life aren't new information. It's just being reminded of the same truths over and over again. A place for our neighbor, but also a place for us. And so this fall, we're excited to start the first of 4 classes that once you go through all these 4, you won't know everything, but we do feel like you will have the foundations and the fundamentals of the Christian life. So this class will be the story of the Bible. And Bob Marshall and Beth Rowlett and myself will teach that. We'll teach it twice during the week. So you could come on Wednesday night, 6:15 to 7:30, kind of the time when Equip used to happen. You could come on Sunday evening as well. Maybe you volunteer on Wednesday night, but you still want to be a part of it. You should come then. And we just have 2 goals for this first class in this series. Number 1, we want you to learn how to read the Bible for yourself, to open it up and to feel like if you don't know what's going on there, that you can somehow get there. You know who to turn to and how to read the Bible. And then second, that you learn to read the Bible as one story, one beautiful story of God's love for his people. And so 10 weeks this fall, and then in the spring, a class on spiritual disciplines, about what it looks like to grow in the Christian life through prayer, through Bible study, through other habits that we can take on in ourselves. And then next fall, a class on the Christian faith. So walking through the basics of the faith so that you know what it is that you believe or know it better. And then a class in the spring of the next year on missional living, about how we can, each of us, take on this commandment that God has made us to love and to care for our neighbor. We're excited about this invitation that we could all grow deeper alongside all the ways that you're already doing that, alongside your adult Sunday school class, alongside your Women of the Word group, alongside your men's Bible study, alongside your discipleship group, alongside your circle. All of those things are ways that we can continue on in this vision and this calling that Jesus has for all of us. As adults, of course, you know that biblical authority, transformational discipleship are at the center of our church, but so is generational investment. One of the main ways that we do that is we invest in students and we invest in kids. So I've told you a lot about where we want to go, but let's think a little bit or watch a video that will show us where we have been this past pandemic year. A lot of you guys know this, but maybe some of you don't, that God has been doing some amazing things on Wednesday nights through our kids and through our student ministry. So let's watch a video that tells the story of that.
You've heard it said that necessity is the mother of invention. Amidst COVID lockdowns, shifting school schedules, unconventional working environments, and an uncertain outlook, it became clear to the family ministry team that innovation was the only way forward. Staring at a blank canvas, we sought to answer one question: how do we continue to live out our mission in the face of so many unknowns? Through much prayer and collaboration, an innovative plan for Wednesday nights was born. We dreamed of doing big ministry in small doses. Do it for a few became the anthem of family ministry. We geared up to roll out the red carpet, no matter how many people were ready to join us. Throwing our expectations out the window, we eagerly awaited those first cars to pull in. Would parents feel safe sending their kid? Would all of the protocols be burdensome? Now that we're out of the habit of meeting together, do families have margin for one more thing right now? In God's grace, and to our delight, Wednesday nights were a huge success. As it turns out, this season that felt like a barrier to ministry became the very catalyst we needed to reinvent a model of ministry that was scalable and sustainable, and it flourished.
This year, 649 people came to Wednesday nights, with an average of 245 kids and students per week.
We saw familiar faces, people who hadn't been to Wednesday nights in a long time, and many people who simply came out of the woodwork. We welcomed 80 kids and students who had never before attended a service or program as Signal Pres. And we had 115 adult volunteers along for the ride as we learned together how to best minister to the next generation in an uncertain time. Providentially, the very things that we considered obstacles led to some of the biggest wins all year. If we had to do it all over again, we would still resolve to do it for a few. But in God's grace and through the commitment of dozens of people doing whatever it takes, the ministry of Signal Pres was multiplied throughout the mountain, and we are energized to use what we learned in this uncommon year to shape the future of family ministry. Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. Leave it to me. Andre, you told me this would be easy. Oh well. The extrovert in me might cry some happy tears. I'm Elizabeth Collins. I'm the director of preschool ministry, and this is really fun. Over this past year, both kids and students have offered a single focused effort on Wednesday evenings as the primary environment for the church to partner with parents in shepherding and discipling kids and students. And to state it clearly, this is what we want to continue with moving forward. So we're going to take some time to share that with you now, and I'm going to start by talking about preschool ministry. Preschool ministry has the honor of, thank you. I told you I'd mess it up.
You got it. Oh, look, it's broken.
Thank you. Preschool ministry has the honor of introducing little ones to the body of Christ. Our church is sometimes the first place where kids are cared for besides a family member. Our group of consistent caregivers provides security and structure from such a young age, and trust is built, and kids know that church is a safe place to be. During the preschool years, we see worship that is unhindered. Kids are dancing, singing, and memorizing scripture with songs and hand motions, hiding God's word in their heart at such a young age. At Signal Pres, we want preschool years to be the time that seeds are planted, curiosity is sparked, and we begin a partnership with parents for a lifetime of growth in the Lord and His goodness. Our call to partner with families reminds me of the beautiful imagery in Isaiah 40. He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. The preschool years are fast but formative. Building on the safety they experience the first years they are cared for in the nursery, we begin teaching basic biblical truths at age 2. At age 4, we want our preschoolers to be a part of corporate worship with us. For part of the service, they'll be in the sanctuary. Then during the sermon, join us for Kingdom Kids, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and kindergartners. Kingdom Kids is going to be the time where we teach and break down all the different parts of a corporate worship service. Things like confession of sin, tithing, how to listen to a sermon, how to read your Bible. You'd be surprised at all that they learn at such a young age. During kids' discipleship this year, when some of our little grades learned the 23rd Psalm, and we said it kind of during that time corporately in worship, and a certain pastor who's on sabbatical missed a line, we were notified. Parents got nudges, and Courtney and Catherine and I heard about it on Wednesday night. Guess what he did? They can memorize at a young age. We also want our 4-year-olds and pre-K kids to be a part of a kids' discipleship group on Wednesday evenings. This is the first place where they'll learn how to be in a small group, continue to build trust with a caring teacher, and learn something new about God each week. We'll worship together, play together, and of course, have fun. Becoming familiar with using a Bible, learning worship songs, or being taught how to pray can never be taught too young. We love to see the seeds that we plant turn into kids singing in the choir, volunteering at Vacation Bible School, serving on a mission trip, or being an active part of their D group, living out their young, ordinary lives as the faithful presence of Jesus' love. Oh, thank you. I'm going to introduce Catherine Payne, our Director of Kids Discipleship.
As Liz said, my name is Catherine Payne, and I'm the Director of Kids Discipleship, so that means that I get to work with both Liz and Courtney, preschoolers all the way through 5th grade. As she mentioned, Kingdom Kids is one of the ways that we've always partnered with families. Another way that we walk alongside you as parents is helping you disciple your children. This past year, kids ministry had to pivot just like everything else, right? And out of that came kids discipleship, which met on Wednesday nights. Now, the structure of kids discipleship looked different, right? It looked different from Sunday school and it looked different from Agape Club, but it still held true to our church's vision and to our enduring values of generational investment and transformational discipleship and biblical truth. Now, when you're trying to reopen ministry in the middle of a pandemic, you wonder, A, will anyone come? And then secondly, how many will come? So we looked at our pre-COVID Sunday school average of children on the children's floor on a given Sunday, which was 66 children, and that's what we planned for. All while hoping that it wasn't just our own children, like children of staff. I'm sure they were hoping that as well. But friends, we had the privilege of welcoming tons of Signal Pres kids, neighborhood kids who walked and rode their bikes, new families who had moved to the mountain during the pandemic and who were looking for a church home and community and a place for their children to belong. We had new faces every single week for a total of 46 new kids and families and a total unique number of 209 children. We had 23 small groups that met in every space on the children's floor, in this room, which we know is huge. There are a lot of us tonight, Westminster alcove, and spilling out into the hallways. Now, while those numbers were exciting and encouraging and a little surprising, the big win was what took place in those small groups. So I have invited Ellen Thomason to come up and share. She was a fourth grade.
I'm here.
She was a fourth grade small group leader, and Ellen, as y'all know, has taught third grade Sunday school on the children's floor for more years than she and I can remember, and she also just hosted backyard Bible school at their home. So I'm going to let Ellen share just a little bit about her experience.
Hi, I had the privilege and the blessing, really, to spend Wednesday nights this last year with 6 fourth grade girls. And I could tell you something special and unique about each one of those girls and how they touched my life, things that I learned from them. But Andre's already given me the word that he's going to pull out the cane on me if I talk too long. So I will tell you, as a group, though, I was delighted and encouraged, and I would encourage you to do the same as these girls did. They were so intentional about inviting friends to Wednesday night. It was rare that we didn't have a visitor or a guest on Wednesday nights, an extra girl that came along with a buddy. And that just delighted me. They were so intentional about inviting their friends and challenged me to do that as well when I come to church on Sundays. But one of the girls that was invited by a friend and family here started coming on Wednesday nights this spring, and her mother came with her to get her registered that first night. And as she was filling out the forms, she shared with Catherine and Liz or whoever was there doing the registration. She asked, could I go up and see where my child will be? I've never been inside of a church before. And that was a light bulb moment for all of us, I think. And of course, she was invited to come up and see and even stay the evening. She did not stay, but her child did and participated with us, seemed to be very engaged in the lesson and the activities. The very next week, she was one of the first ones there, and the first thing that she said was, I already know the memory verse, and told it to me right then and there. And never missed a Wednesday night. And one of the Wednesday nights when we were discussing Jesus' resurrection, she did mentioned, as some of them were asking, how did that happen and how did he appear, and all. And she said she believed in reincarnation. And I thought, well, that wasn't on my list of lesson questions for you to ask. But I didn't want to, embarrass her or anything like that, but I couldn't let it go in front of the other girls. And so I asked her how did she defined reincarnation, and she hit it on the nose. And so I just reminded all of them that we know that God is our creator, and he created us in his image, and that the Bible is his word, and we know that that is truth. We have talked about it being the truth every week. And I just encouraged her to look through the Bible and find reincarnation, and because I had never seen it there. And so she seemed okay with that, and I told her, when you find it, or if you find something about that, please show it to me, because I'm not a scholar. And then we moved straight on into the lesson. But you just never know who, when you invite someone to worship or to growth, what's going on in their lives. And she has just really been a blessing to me, and I'm so blessed by the person that invited her too. So.
What Ellen didn't tell you is that this little girl went to Bible school at her house. She could have walked to another home that was hosting right down the street, because that would have been her neighborhood. But just the relationship that Ellen had built and the relationship that she had with the girls, she wanted to spend that week with Ellen. So as she said, all of these things, small group discipleship for kids, is just a place for these relationships to grow, for kids to learn and spend time in God's Word, for them to ask hard questions that they might not ask in a classroom of 20 to 25 friends, and then a place for them to practice sharing their faith. So all of these things, of course, point back to our vision and point back to our enduring values, and we're just really looking forward to learning and growing together more this fall. Thank you.
Hi, church family. My name is Beth DuRoy, and I am the Director of Youth and Children's Music. Here at Signal Pres, we are so blessed to offer 3 children's choirs to disciple our children through music. Through the rich text of our songs, we teach our children God's Word and the doctrines of our faith in the way they will remember for the rest of their lives. These songs will continue to minister to their souls long after they've graduated from our classrooms. Learning to use their whole bodies to sing skillfully to the Lord will empower and embolden them as worship leaders and as congregational participants as they enter their adult lives and ministry. Our children's choir team is passionate about the Signal Pres enduring values of generational investment, transformational discipleship, and biblical authority. We are thrilled to welcome the children of our community and of our church to children's choirs this coming August. I think of the passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 6 and 7, where Paul writes, "I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth." We trust that as we plant and as we water, God will give the growth in the lives of the children that the Lord entrusts to our teaching. We offer choir for ages 4s, 5s, and kindergarten. That's Joy Choir. For 1st and 2nd graders, Praise Choir, and for 3rd through 5th graders, Westminster Singers. This year, all 3 of our children's choirs will meet on Wednesdays from 5:30 to 6:15. I will be teaching Westminster Singers, and I'm so excited to introduce you to our new Joy and Praise Choir directors in the coming weeks. When choirs conclude each Wednesday at 6:15, the students will receive a hearty snack before they go on to kids' discipleship. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Camille Ward, and I am one of the student ministry directors here alongside Jackson Clemmer. But for as long as I have been here, Wednesday nights for the student ministry have always been our primary environment for welcoming, reaching, and discipling students, both in our church and in our community. And D groups and our D group leaders were and still very much are at the core of what holds and brings together our ministry on Wednesday nights. And even before the pandemic hit, one of the things that was just kind of on our radar as staff was the reality that we had kind of outgrown the D group model in the way that we had always known it, which at that time was putting together an entire grade of the same gender together with 2 to 3 to maybe even 4 adult leaders. But our D groups were starting to have anywhere between 20 to 30. Some were even on the cusp of 40 students in them, which just made it hard for discipleship and connection to happen on an equal level for all students. And so what was already on our radar at the beginning of 2020 was figuring out a way to dive back into a focused effort toward discipling and shepherding our students. And then the pandemic hit in March, and in many ways it forced us to make the changes that we already knew were needed. And here is how we did that. We did it by breaking down our D groups into groups of 12 or less, and then assigning a leader to each of those groups and telling them that for this year, these are your few. Meaning that those 5 to 8 to 12 students were the ones that our leaders carried the spiritual responsibility for, the ones who were under their care, the ones that they were circling up with on a Wednesday night and checking in with during the week. And what that allowed and gave to both our students and our leaders was, number one, the ability to love small. And what I mean by that is the ability to give every student relational space with people to belong to. And then the second thing it gave to both our students and leaders was an intentional point of connection and community with their peers, with the leader, and to Christ in discipleship. And so what I can tell, so as we look toward the fall, we want to preserve the best of both of what we had before COVID and what came out of this past year, while also being attentive to the new things that God has for us. And so what I can tell you as we move into the fall is that as a student ministry, we do plan on using that entire time, 5:30 to 7:30, with the plan of bringing back some element of gathering as a large group, right? Being able to share a meal together, to worship together, to do live and in-person teaching, to still have opportunities for the whole D group to connect while still prioritizing leaders gathering with their few for D group time. And the reason that we want to stay committed to that is because the single greatest win on a Wednesday night is for our students to be engaged in honest conversation around the scriptures in such a way that they are heard, cared for, and pointed to Jesus. And what we have found over this past year is that the best chance of that happening is going to be in the context of a smaller group. And I would tell you that what kids ministry and student ministry have discovered over this past year is that small groups are the primary or have become the pathway in helping us reach all people better and helping us equip people better. And it's where we experience the rhythms of what it means to be the faithful presence of Jesus' love. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Celestial Allen, and I am the director of Night Owls. And I am so excited that I get to work alongside Kara Rock as our new director of Embrace Ministry. So back in March 4th of 2020, many of us gathered here in this room to celebrate God's faithfulness to the Embrace ministry for the past 10 years. The families, God has been faithful to them through Embrace and in many other ways. But the families that we serve in Embrace have been touched by foster care, adoption, disability, or a combination of those three. Over the past 15 months, God has continued to be faithful to Embrace Ministry. He has allowed us to continue to provide support on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, as well as allowing Night Owls to still meet, as well as Young Life Capernaum. So moving forward to this fall, just like many of the other ministries, we want to focus on worship, belonging, and a chance to grow. So in worship, we will continue to provide support for our families. And what that support might look like is either a one-to-one friend to attend church services with the person that needs those services, or it could be time away in one of our 2 sensory-friendly rooms where they can just step back and take a break for a few minutes. But we want to work with your family to come up with a personalized plan of what is best for your loved one or for your family member. Then moving on to belonging, we have created the ministries of Night Owls and Young Life Capernaum specifically so that people feel that they have a place to belong. Night Owls provides respite for parents who are weary and tired, and it gives them time to spend together to focus on their marriage a little bit and to just take a breather. Young Life Capernaum meets here, and that ministry focuses on peer-to-peer relationships, and so that's a beautiful time for our teenagers who have disabilities to get to know each other and have that sense of belonging. Lastly, we want to focus on growth for our families. This is something new for us, so we are so excited that this fall, let me back up. First off, I just want to say that we believe in Embrace Ministry that the gospel needs to be presented in a way that any person can understand, whether they have a disability or not, And we want all people to be equipped to be the faithful presence of Jesus' love. And so our plan for this fall is to offer a Bible study that is designed for people with disabilities. And we are so excited. This has been a long time coming. But our families will have the opportunity to choose between what they have done in the past, which is have support on a Wednesday night so that their child or student can attend D groups or children's discipleship. But this year, our teens and adults will have the opportunity to choose the Embrace Bible Study. The curriculum that we have chosen, we've been looking for a long time. It's interactive and it can be easily adapted for children. So if you have a child with a disability and you're interested in Bible study for them, you can talk with myself or Kara Rock, and we would be happy to talk that through with you and possibly offer that option. But Kara is super excited to be here, and she is anxious to talk with families to collaborate on those one-to-one plans for your family member. And we just thank you so much for your support of Embrace. Thank you.
We have an awesome team, and you've seen that firsthand tonight. And that's not even all of them. There are so many more that make up this incredible team that is the church staff. So I want to thank them, and I know you do as well. Yeah, it's worth it. Y'all have listened well and you've listened long, so I do want to go over A Place to Belong, but I'm going to do that in as expedited a form as I can. I'm going to tell you then how we're going to make up the time and still have discussion. I promise you tonight, I won't leave the building until you've had a chance to ask your question, and so if I have to be the one that stays to do that, I will do that with you. But A Place to Belong. So a week ago Sunday, I was at the healing service, and this happens all the time at the healing service, but it happened again. Somebody came into that service, and very clearly this person was having a hard time of some sort. But this person walked in not alone, but flanked by probably 10 people. And clearly these people had been praying for this person, and they were there that night to pray for this person, and they were going to be walking with that person through whatever road this person was on. And so I'm sitting there a week ago Sunday, and I'm watching this happen. It's not the first time. And what I'm thinking is, I love this church, because that is who we are. And that is what happens here. And it's beautiful. You, Signal Mountain Presbyterian Church, have a tradition of doing community incredibly, incredibly well. And what we're saying now is that we need to find ways to open up and multiply that community for you and your neighbor. So this is just a totally natural thing. It's not anybody's fault. But one just reality is that the longer a group of people in community goes on and the tighter knit they are, the harder it becomes for someone outside of that group to break into it. Okay, and that is not at all because people in it are mean or don't want new people or inhospitable. Not at all. It's just a natural byproduct of the tight bonds that have been formed over time. So if you've been in some group and you have tight community in that group, whether it's a Sunday school class or a long-standing small group, and I come in there, I simply cannot possibly make up the 5, 10, 20 years of relational investment that your group has. And so even if you have a chair for me in the group, it might feel to me like there's not actually a place for me in the group. All that to say, the incredible work that this church has done at building community does not mean that now we can just rest on our laurels and expect it to be for everybody. But in fact, in sort of a paradoxical way, it means that we have to work especially intentionally now to make sure that we open up and multiply the kind of community that so many of you know so well for you and your neighbor. Our church, we believe, needs a clear, visible on-ramp to community that is visible to everyone who walks in here. And that on-ramp needs to lead to a particular form of community that has welcoming newcomers, multiplying and expanding, built into its very DNA. And we believe that that form of community is going to be what we find as we move into community groups. Now, before I tell you exactly a little bit about those, and I'm not going to give you everything, let me just say that for some of you in this room who have community at this church, community groups that I'm about to explain might not be for you as much as they will be for your neighbor. You're clearly welcome, and we'd love for you to be a part of them, but they might not be for you as much as they would be for your neighbor. But I want you to remember who your neighbor is. Your neighbor very well might be somebody in this room tonight who over the course of the pandemic has realized that they have access to the worship service of every church in America whenever they want it. And yet they realized over the pandemic that even as they're taking in more preaching and worship than they've ever done before in their lives, the one thing they haven't been able to find is what they're still desperately needing, and that is belonging in community. Or your neighbor might be the person in this room who's been here for perhaps 5 or 10 years. And you know her name and she knows your name. But she's still looking around this very large room of lots of people thinking, who here are my people? And where do I really belong here? Or your neighbor might be somebody who during the pandemic decided, you know what, it's time for us to make a change. And so, working remotely now, they opened a map of the United States and they said, where do we want to go? And they measured a bunch of things and they circled Signal Mountain, and now they live on Signal, and perhaps they're even sitting in this room tonight saying, where do I belong here? And who are my people? And community groups are for you and for your neighbor. So what are they? Well, suffice it to say for now that community groups will be groups of 8 to 12-ish people who meet every week in homes, various days, various times, decided on by the group. And when you are part of a community group, that will be the place where you belong. We really do believe that these people in your community group will be your people. And these will be the people who down the road are going to the healing service to pray with you. And this will be a place where you become. You'll be studying God's Word alongside of brothers and sisters in Christ. And we don't think you're going to leave that the same way that you came into it. And this will be a place where you bless. We think that these community groups are going to be the place where we together, in a very bottom shelf type way, learn how to love our neighbors well. Just by showing up for them week in and week out, praying for them, serving them. And we think that what we learn in these community groups is then going to expand way beyond the community groups. Now, I will just say for this that we plan to start 8 or so community groups in September. And I won't give you all the details. I'll get you to circle August 1st on your calendar. August 1st in worship, we'll be preaching on community, and that'll be the day by which we're able to give you many, many more details about these community groups and how you get involved in them. But I'll just say that we're going to make it possible for you to dip your toes into this in the fall to see if it works for you, and we really do hope and think that it will. If you're interested, if you know now that you're interested in being part of a community group, the best thing to do would be to take the Connect card that's at your table, let us know that, fill that out, make sure you write community group on there, and we will take that and we will make sure that as they're forming, you're a part of that. If you want to lead one of those, the same thing. But that is how we'll make a place for you and your neighbor to belong. Well, we do want to give you time to talk. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have time at tables now where you, as was said earlier, you have a table host. And we want you to ask any questions, to give any feedback, to share any concerns. Your table host is ready for that. After that is done, we will have an abbreviated but still have a time starting in about 10 or so minutes of town hall in here. And our plan is to go about 10 minutes past 8. If you need to leave before that, feel free to leave before that. Child care will continue. But for now, take time at your table. Go.
well? Did you ever feel like you didn't have enough time? I know. Did you ever feel like you just could use some more time? Me too. Man, me too. Amazing. It's like the most important part, and here I am kind of like talking over you. So I'm aware of that awkwardness, so hi. Hey, listen, we want you to continue that discussion. But you may have noticed, I don't know, I bet some percentage of you noticed the schedule and the timing and how behind we've been. Maybe just a couple of you noticed that. I don't know, maybe. So, man, we have a lot of things going on. Can we just take 1 second and thank the staff for this amazing stuff that they're doing? That is amazing. Thank you, kitchen, for all the food. Amazing, amazing. I know. Y'all were just starting to get into it, and I came up and interrupted it. I know. I'm so sorry. You can hang around. We love having you here. So, but in the interest of somehow, sort of, kind of, staying on any kind of schedule, sort of, I had a full head of hair when we started tonight, and back there trying to manage this schedule, it all went away, you guys. So listen, a couple of things. We seriously want to hear from you. We really want to hear from you, which seems counter of what I'm doing right now, interrupting you being able to talk. So, but a couple of quick things. We have this card, and it says where you can put your name optionally and a way to reach you optionally, and then your comments. We want to hear those. So that is definitely a way you can be heard. And I think what's about to happen is some staff is coming up here, and then we're going to do Q&A or something. There's a lot of chairs up here, and so I bet that's important for some reason. And so if that's what's happening, then staff will start showing. Oh, look at that. So that's going to happen. So those of you staff can come up here while we're doing this. So, hey, we don't have much time, as you've noticed. And so what I would like to do is those of you that have the, like, man, at our table, we have a thought. We have a question. We have an idea. This is that time if you want to speak and do that for us. And so, and then right before I do that, just remember there's also this card where a connection card. If we have some people that are newer here, and so if we don't know you, we'd love to get to know you. If you need us to pray for you, we would love the honor to be able to pray for you. So that's there as well. Okay, I have some microphones that I bet somebody else is going to help me. People are pointing, but I bet these microphones get picked up by somebody, and then or maybe I'm that guy. It's for them. I got it now. And somewhere there's a microphone. It's a well-oiled machine. Right there is the microphone. Okay, I've got all the details. Okay, so there is a microphone. You may see it. It's halfway back to my right, to your left. And so if you've got a question or a thought that you would like to share, that you would like an answer or more details about, exactly right now is that time, and I have these microphones that I will pass to these beautiful people that are on stage so that they can answer that as well. So questions or thoughts from the audience, now is that time. There's that microphone. You only gave us like 10 minutes to talk, so we barely got there. So questions or thoughts? Dan Stanley. Okay, great. Here, Dan, okay, sure, I'll give you this microphone. Oh, yeah, whatever. Yeah, here you go. That's great. We'll just do that right there, and then here. I think just keep talking, and
okay. So our table had some questions about sort of the age group of adults that have children, because it seems that the Sunday schools that they had been in are not on the list, and also they would have a hard time finding a place for their children on the Sunday morning. And then the Wednesdays, at least from what I understood, is that most of the curriculum for the adults really is sort of the onboarding, that the Wednesday, Sunday. And so what about the adults that have been here for a long time? They're putting their children somewhere on Wednesday night. And then, so is community groups really the only time for the adults that have children as far as logistical standpoint?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right that for adults who have kids, living at home, Sunday mornings, because of our worship times, because of our focus on Wednesday night, that's not a space that we can easily accommodate those Sunday school classes. That's just one of the changes that we just had to face. That is just a part of this direction that we're excited about going. I would say if you are one of those people, I would say there are kind of three things that I would point you to. So number one, I would say to really think about making community groups a priority for you. That there will be, not a lot, but a few community groups that will meet on Wednesday night, so you can drop your kids off here and be it with a family, or with a community group during that time. We're just doing a few then because we want to just make sure that we're not asking you to choose, gosh, do I want to be a kid's discipleship teacher or a D group leader, or do I want to have that? We just want to make sure that we're being thoughtful about how much we're putting on a certain night. But a community group would be an option for you, whether it's on Wednesday night or whether it's just prioritizing that, because it is just so important on another night of the week. The second would be to really think about those learning environments to be a place. Again, it's not just for someone who is new to the faith, but all of us have room to grow. And so that can be a space for you to do that. And the other place is we just have lots of spaces that we didn't have a lot of time to talk about tonight that already exist. So Women of the Word is a space for you. The women's book group that started last night, that's another space. Men's Bible studies, discipleship groups. Many of you are already involved in small groups. So those are all the things that I would point you to if that's the kind of situation that you're wondering where you fit.
Yeah, other questions. Let's use that. Oh, Esme, great. Fantastic.
I don't think it's on.
Keep talking.
Is it on? Oh, there we go. We were talking about how it feels like there's the opportunity and perhaps trial at the same time of needing to partner better with the church in terms of discipling our children, and how to go about that. What resources might be available? Who might we talk to? What are ways to go about doing that? Thanks.
Just keep talking. Yep. Okay. I'll take that. Thank you, Esme. That's actually something that family ministry, student ministry, and kids, along with Andy and Joey, are working on something this fall, sort of a pathway to walk alongside parents and help them with home discipleship. That's something that we could also see maybe play out in a community group. If it's a group of parents that have children of similar ages, then maybe they take that fourth week of the month, and they practice some home or family discipleship things together and encourage one another in that. So that's something that we're working on and developing and excited about sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. You coming here, Frank? Okay, great. Take this one. And then Tom, just hang there and you'll go next.
Hey, got a couple of questions from our table. So, one simple one here, the Inquirer's class. Is that going to continue?
It is. So we are we're having a new, we call it the Intro to Signal Pres class, trying to make that a little plainer as to what it is. That the next one runs July 11, 18, and 25, and we're actually going to do that at my home on Sunday evening. So if you want to be a part of that, please, you'll see announcements all about that and sign up for that. But we will do that on a Sunday night next. And then in the fall, we're going to do it on a Wednesday night alongside of kids' discipleship. So yes, it's going to continue to happen. It will happen at different times, making it widely available to all who want to be a part of it.
Okay, next question is community groups. So will the website have descriptions about each community group and, to allow informed selection, current members visible in that group, that sort of thing? What kind of information are you going to have in terms of choosing a group? Mm-hmm.
We're finalizing that, and by August 1st, we'll have all the answer to that. But yeah, you will be able to see online and offline as well here at the church the groups that are meeting, the nights and times that they're meeting. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to see everybody in the group, but the process will be something along the lines of you working with staff to find the best group for you.
based on a number of factors from schedule to kind of where you are and what you're looking for. We're going to make sure that we find the best place for you and get you there. And you won't have to wait months and months to be a part of it. Those will be open on a regular basis.
Okay, promise is the last one. And this one has come up, I think, multiple times from multiple people, but thinking about children's ministry on Wednesday nights solely, and with the kind of the resumption of sports and school and academics and all that, how are we thinking through, if you kind of miss that night, where's that child going to be discipled? So if y'all can speak to that.
Sure, that has come up. Just to let you know that soccer practice did happen during the pandemic. We faced, other things that also were taking place on Wednesday night last year. So that's nothing new. I think that obviously we would love for you to make kids discipleship a part of your rhythm, your family rhythm for the week. We do believe that it is teaching solid truths, and we think that they, are in the formative years, the age 4 to 14, they really need to be here and be in community and be establishing those spiritual habits. So we encourage you to do that. But we also, like I said a minute ago to Esme, will be walking alongside you as parents and helping you disciple in the home, and giving you resources and equipping you to do that as well. So.
Tom, yeah, great. In the pandemic, we streamed our services to those that could not make it here or come in. Are we going to continue any mechanism to stream services to those who may not be able to attend in person?
The answer to that is yes. And as I say that, the plan is, as we begin, we will be streaming both services. Okay. Now, that's the answer, yes. But I really want to highlight your last phrase, for those who are not able to be with us in person. If you're in this room tonight, you're able to be with us in person. And the stream is not designed for you on a regular basis. I just want to drop that and let you do with it what you want.
Okay. And we had a second question about the website, and are there ongoing changes and improvements to the website, and what does that look like?
Yes, Allison Dallin is in the back right now, yes, with no mic. Yes, we are, Allison is trying to work on the new website. If we would just stop giving her 300 people events to host and plan. So we hope by the fall, in that range, to be launching a new website that will describe much more accurately the shape of ministry right now at the church and invite people into it.
These are actually questions, but maybe you can comment on a couple of things that came up at our table. One was that Sunday school has often been a way for newcomers to have fellowship with the church when they're new. That's one, and then the other also about Sunday school, and also kind of about new people. Sometimes couples will come to worship a few times and decide, oh, hey, I like Signal Pres, let's go there. And then sort of their next step is picking a Sunday school, of course, on Sunday. And then so if you guys can sort of comment to that, Joey, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, George. Yeah, I think I would say that has been the case for many folks, that Sunday school has been a connection point. Because, listen, it just kind of hits what we all want, right? We want to be in worship, and then we just want a space where we're not just side by side with one another looking up front, but that we have connection points with other people. I would say that what we have increasingly found is that Sunday school has been not so much for those classes that we listed up there, but it has just been less and less effective as a community for really bringing people together on a weekly basis. You know, when I think about some of those Sunday school classes, there are folks who are, who have, school age kids, who are, it's kind of an entryway point, but the sort of consistency, we just felt like it's not that it's horrible, In fact, it's really been a meaningful place, but we just feel like we can do better. And so that's not to say, you know what, we're doing away with those kind of communities that people have experienced in Sunday school. We're just saying, let's find a better way to do this that looks like doing it at a different time. So in the ways in which, for many of you, you came to Signal Pres and, you worshiped with us, you committed, you found a Sunday school. Our hope and prayer is that, 5 years from now, people will be telling the same story, but instead of Sunday school, they'll just say community group, that's the place where they found that kind of community that you found in the class that you've been a part of.
I just want to add one thing, which is that the middle hour between the two services, so basically we're talking 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, is presently and will now continually be a time designed for intentional, informal but intentional gathering of our church family. And it's working. I don't know who was here, if you were here on Sunday, but after that 9 o'clock service, the greeting room was filled with people, many of whom are new to our church, sharing a cup of coffee and one of Carol's scones. And that spills outside when the weather is good. And that time lingered on well past 10:30, and then it wound up being a mix between those staying after 9 and coming for 11. I want to invite you to that. I want to invite you to stick around or come early and be a part of that time. It's a great place to meet people new to the church and to see old friends, and it's there, and we would love for you to be a part of it.
One of the questions at our table had to do with Sunday school fitting in between those two worship services at 9 and 11, and one of the questions was, why couldn't the early service be at 8:30 so there would be more time in the middle for Sunday school, because with the 9 and 11, that means that basically everyone in the Sunday school class has just decide to attend the same worship service. Otherwise, you'd have a very short Sunday school class in between. And in connection with that, there was also a question about who was on the focus groups when they were determining about the time for the worship services.
Thanks. So in terms of the time, we felt like, and it was affirmed by your attendance patterns in a pandemic and also by those focus groups, that 9 o'clock was on the early end of accessible for the majority of people. That though it largely might be mental, to say even 8:45, which wouldn't be enough, but 8:30 certainly, people who would not consider coming at 8:30 seemed more than happy to be present at 9. And so that's why we stuck with 9. The identity of the worship groups, I can look back of the focus groups, I can look back and tell you, I can say that we designed those focus groups to be representative of you, each one across generational lines and lengths of times in the church. I could find the names, but I'm not going to be able to recall them at this time. And also one last thing. I do believe that some of the Sunday school classes, you'll stay tuned to your teacher in their announcement, but I do believe that some are planning to meet in the middle. So we'll just watch and see how that plays out.
So I'm not sure if this attendance is representative of brisket being served or coming to see you guys. But I have a feeling brisket played a big part in it. And one of the questions that came up that our table came up or asked was, given that the kids are going to be here on Wednesday night and there's going to be some teaching on Wednesday night, are we not thinking still about having some meals on Wednesday nights? And I know we've talked about some of that before, but I think that's a question that maybe some other people have on their minds.
Right. So the answer is that meals in this room on Wednesday nights are not going to be possible, because as you could maybe see in that video, and you can see it in other pictures, on Wednesday nights in a beautiful way, this room is flooded with small groups of kids sitting on the floor, their leaders on the floor with them, and so we're not going to be able to have tables, have a meal, and then have those kids in here. When we do small groups from the youngest to the students, almost every square inch of this church is taken up by a small group of students or kids. We, though, are researching ways to make food available on Wednesday night for those who might need it in terms of parents or for others. We will be back in touch on that.
One other quick, probably easier question. Has there been I know you mentioned the Wednesday night teaching times and also doing it on Sundays. Has there been thought about what times on Sundays that might be available or be done at?
I'm going to let him answer that, but I just forgot to say that as you see it in your packet, read about it, we will still have church meals. And we are going to do them at least quarterly. And we expect that, and we're gonna blow those out kind of like we've blown tonight out. They won't all be in this room. Might be a picnic or other things, but I want you to hear we will have church meals regularly. And if you're in the Highlanders, that's the over 65 or 55 range, that your Highlanders lunch and Bible study will resume in August, and you will have a meal every month.
So, John's question about the time on Sunday evening. I mean, I think what we're going to try something and we're going to see what works. I think right now we're thinking somewhere around 6 o'clock on Sunday evenings. And our thought behind that is that we, again, when a worship service is happening, just like we're prioritizing on Sunday mornings, like we want to make sure that we're honoring that. And so we don't want people to choose, am I going to go to the healing service or I'm going to go to that? And so we think when the healing service is over, this would be a time for folks to gather. So 6 o'clock is what we're thinking right now. Now we may try that and we think, you know what, we've got to find another time. But the idea is just to offer 2 times during the week so that you can have Wednesday night or at this point Sunday as a place where you can be a part of one of those environments.
We've gotten a lot. There's probably more. You probably have more questions, but we've gone over 20 minutes, and I'm sure there's some children and some caregivers that would love to have us stop. So a couple of quick housekeeping, less than 1 minute. Do you see these beautiful flowers sitting at the middle of the table? Have you thought, I sure would love that beautiful flower? Let me tell you a little thing that's been going on that's pretty exciting. So a new ministry, because of COVID, got started here at the church, and it is called Caring Presence. Is that the right? Okay, yeah, great. I said the right thing. And so check this out. Something you may not have known has been happening. Every week, all kinds of women gave flowers and made little happy treats for those that are in the 70 to 100 age. And every week, they had them deliver every Tuesday these flowers. And people started donating, and this turned into a thing. And at Christmas, they gave a special thing, and at Easter, they gave a special thing. And about 50 or 60 people have been receiving every Tuesday a beautiful thing of flowers like this. And so we had this idea. What if we had these flowers here to show you, and we're asking for a small donation for you to take it, between $20 and $30. And with that, what they're wanting to do is keep this ministry growing and getting bigger and bigger. And so they want to have a refrigerator area where they can store these flowers as they collect them. And then we want to keep giving them out to those that are in our community and in our church. Just a touch point, a way of saying that, hey, we haven't forgotten about you, we love you. And so if that's interesting to you and you would like to support that and you would like those flowers, please take them with you, and you can give money in some way that maybe Scott knows the answer of how you can give that money.
The table where you paid, if you paid tonight, over there where Johnny is raising his hand, will be where you can do that, and we would love to do that. There are also orchids in Woodward Hall, same deal. So please feel free. Now, as we close, let me just say this. Whether you've been here for 50 years or whether you've been here for 5 minutes, right? Every single one of us over the last 15 months has, to one degree or another, become disconnected from the life and mission of the church. And if you take nothing else away from tonight, please take this. This is our invitation for you to hit refresh, that is to reconnect with the life and the mission of this church family. And we hope you leave knowing how. There is a place to worship. There is a place to belong. And there is a path to grow. And we want you to be a part of it. So please, hit refresh. Reconnect with the life of this church. A church that is now focused on its vision and will be seeing, Lord willing, the fruit of that vision in your life and your neighbor's life. If you need to go now, please feel free to go. But we're going to close by doing what some of you haven't done in many, many months, singing with a lot of people in a large room. And so Jason's going to play. Mark and Trish are going to lead. Would you stand as we sing?
Good night.
If you have a comment card, please put it in the envelope so we make sure and get that and put it in the basket. Comment card, envelope, basket. Thank you.